You know, I'll be honest with you, Lando Norris had me. He definitely pulled the wool over my eyes, especially on the back of the Monaco Grand Prix qualifying session. You see the way that that dude threaded that needle around them there Monte Carlo street. He was god tier. Massenet double apex settings. He was a different level, a different gravy. So you can forgive me then for feeling that Lando Norris 2.0 had turned himself a corner. No longer was he going to be the low-hanging journalistic tropes that Lando Norris doesn't have what it takes as far as mental fortitude. No longer was it going to be the story that Lando Norris can't handle pressure, because what more pressurised circumstance in Formula One is there than Q3 at Monaco? That lap last weekend was absolutely god tier, beating around there the guy who they describe as Ayrton Senna at Monaco. F1 maths, this is basic. So surely then Lando is the favourite to win himself a Drivers' Championship. It is Lando's to lose, surely, now that he's overcome his multitudinous foibles, those things, bits and bobs that were in his way previously. Well, Oscar Piastri, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, had other ideas. No, he is scarily good, this dude. Now again, low-hanging tropes as far as that dude's so robust, he's so stoic, unflappable as far as the length and breadth of his mental fortitude. But I think that's lazy, chat. I think we saw something different from Oscar Piastri today. Here's my supposition. I don't know if you're Lando Norris, notwithstanding the fact that you're driving the same god-tier machinery in the MCL 39, whose durable competitive advantage, by the way, has only been fortified on the back of the newly instituted for TD018 FlexiWing. Was 20mm, now 15. Was 15mm flex, now 10mm. Now, though, it feels like Oscar Piastri has kicked on, eh? If I don't know how to beat that dude if you are Lando Norris. Again, that dude has no Achilles heel. Where are the weak spots, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury? Last year, of course, it was his pace in absolute terms. You could catch Oscar Piastri in qualifying, let's say. You could get him on the grounds of tyre management, for he was a 7 out of 10 at best. But between now and then, he's gone away and he's done what Lando Norris should have done. He's gone away and he's worked on his craft. He sees his vulnerable, weak, vulnerable underbelly. He's worked on those things all aforementioned, and he's now better, bigger and brighter. I would contend there's a couple of things that we saw in the qualifying session today, and those were this. Oscar Piastri's faster overall than Lando Norris. Lest we forget that this is a Lando Norris track around the Barcelona circuit. He put it on pole ahead of Maximilian Verstappen last year. So if past his prologue, you can be forgiven for thinking that Lando should have been favourite, but he wasn't. Oscar Piastri was the favourite to put it on pole for these reasons. He's solid around every single facet, the requisite minerals that you need to become a champion. Mental fortitude is there. He's cool and calm. Did you hear him in his communication with his race engineer after he put it on pole? You'd be forgiven for thinking this dude had just been on a Sunday drive. That's how cool and cold this dude is. He's unget-atable. Again, pace. Bloody Nora, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Lando Norris was going to nail it, because he had nailed it. He put it on provisional pole. Oscar Piastri needed to do something. So too, I would contend that Lando Norris, every time he put his foot down, particularly in FP2, looked like the pace of the field. You saw those 118s that he was banging out ad infinitum, in extremis almost, towards the latter stage of FP2 on medium tyres, no less. Oscar Piastri, though, pulled it out from the flames in the peakiest of peak moments. Oh, and by the way, to the tune, not of a couple hundredths, 2/10 around the track. That's 80 seconds worth. A tenth is a chasm in Formula One, a story told in tenths, of course. Fine margins always, that's how you win. That Oscar Piastri dunked on his teammate in the same car to the tune of 2/10 has to mean something. I think Oscar's faster. My supposition up to this point had always been that Lando Norris has the speed, and in a circumstance sans pressure would always be Oscar Piastri. But I've got to take two seats. Oscar Piastri has rubbished that. He's taken that supposition, that thesis out my hand, and he's thrown it on the floor and stamped all over it. I think he's quicker now than Lando Norris. It's not just about pressurised circumstance. Ergo, I think Oscar Piastri, in his third season no less, Lando Norris is seventh if I recall correctly, is a better driver, better equipped, more well-rounded, more robust in aspect and circumstance than one Lando Norris. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is scary. Remember as well, the headline under which we have this conversation is that Oscar Piastri gapped in qualifying one Lando Norris, who is no slouch, not to the tune of a couple hundredths, but to the tune of a couple tenths. Oh, the humanity. For real, the world watches and waits to see whether Lando and Maximilian Verstappen behind him can do anything on the running down to turn one, which constitutes 585 metres. Because if they do not, this will be Oscar Jack Piastri's race and potentially OJ Piastri's championship. Oh, and by the way, if we talk about Lando Norris very quickly, how must that dude be feeling? It was there. It was right in his hands. Going into the final hot laps in Q3, he was provisional pole, and then Oscar Piastri seizes, steals Lando Norris's lunch money. That belongs to me, sir. Lando, you can take 2 seats, take a coffee break. And when I say take a coffee break, I mean bring me my coffee. Lando, your time is done at McLaren. Oh, and by the way, Nico Rosberg put it to Andrea Stella that you guys need to institute for some sort of team orders, to which Andrea Stella responded, no, we're just going to leave it in the hands of the judges, aka drivers. Nico Rosberg said, you know what, apropos, now more than ever, that 2016 was the time when Lewis and Nico came together, handing the victory to one Maximilian Verstappen in his maiden victory, I'll have you know. And if past his prologue, that will always end up in tears. Nico Rosberg said it doesn't work when you have two drivers who want the same thing. They cannot be friends. Oh, and by the way, Maximilian Verstappen naysayers will be partying today, this afternoon. But I would argue that they are abbots of unreason yet again. You see that dude struggling in that car, understeer settings, tyre degradation settings, thermal wear and graining. Max Verstappen left the car and he was none too pleased. However, he can take solace from the fact that not me, Max Glazing, but Nico Rosberg said this when he saw him trackside. That Max Verstappen's genius is that he taken all the understeer out of the car, meaning therefore that the car was temperamental. There's an equal and opposite downside, and Max Verstappen was leveraging every ounce, every millimetre of his genius with a view to manipulate the car on and around the limits of adhesion. There was no way that he should be able to put that car on third, very nearly on the front row. But yet again, Maximilian Verstappen does it again. No headlines, but the stealthy, the discerning-eyed F1 fans and grizzled F1 vets amongst us will know what they witnessed in Max Verstappen then. But the championship and its aspect has changed. Oh, and by the way, Lewis Hamilton. Oh, you of little faith, Cameron. There is no way I would have lost my wife, my mortgage, my house, my children. I would have bet everything that Charles Leclerc was going to beat Sir Lewis, Carl Davis and Hamilton 7-time GOAT settings to pole to the tune, or to in qualifying even to the tune of at the very least 2/10. Lewis Hamilton says, I will see you that, Cameron, and I will raise you this. P5, best start in a Scuderia Ferrari car, that their red car with them their yellow badges atop. Props to Sir Lewis, and who's to bet against him for putting it on podium, as he alluded to post race scrum, potentially because that Scuderia Ferrari is super quick in race trim. Oh, and by the way, George Russell proves that Mercedes is also quick in warmer climes. Lewis must be looking at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixton thinking, hang on, I should have said the word sabotage. Why didn't you give me that car last year? That car that can go so quickly in warmer climes. What's happened there? George Russell says, I wasn't surprised to do exactly the same time to 3 significant figures as versus one Maximilian Verstappen, because we've been there all year. George Russell will go well tomorrow. But again, the story of the Barcelona Grand Prix will be told into turn 1. If Oscar Piastri can defend, get a decent launch, defensive posture and consolidate for P1, they say that it's easier to overtake around this circuit because of some of the track adjustments. I would contend that it's easier if you're in the carbon fibre zone. If you're dealing with fire-breathing dragons, the likes of which we may never have seen, may never see again in Formula 1, in OJ Piastri, Maximilian Verstappen, and add Lando Norris to there, I don't think you're getting around any single one of those dudes, particularly after lap 2. It's going to get techie, then techie things. I will see you 30 minutes before lights out tomorrow.